Well, I do want to welcome you back to this fourth session of our Awakening to Quantum Life conference. We have covered several topics already in our time together. In the first section, I did an introductory teaching called The Hidden World is Being Revealed, and the goal of that session was to help you understand that there is a greater world than you can see and perceive with physical senses. It is a transcendent world. It is an invisible world, but this microscopic world is actually the domain that controls everything else. All that you can see is contained in this world, this domain, this matrix, this kingdom, this field that you cannot see. Everything was created in that place and from that place, and is sustained by the energy in that place. And so the hidden world is being revealed. It began to plainly come into view about 100 years ago with the advent of quantum science, quantum mechanics, and it was people like Max Planck and Niels Bohr and Edwin Schrodinger and many other of the early physicists in this nascent science who began to introduce us to these things. And we've already seen that the world was turned upside down when these scientists began to show us indisputable truth. In the second session, as we've talked about this quantum life, which is the life we live in the quantum world, we talked about how that we see things differently. And I spoke very much about the double slit experiment there. And if you didn't understand, even though we went over it 3 times, using both a graphic chart, a cartoon, and a verbal explanation, I was pleased most of you in this group, live group, seemed to get it. I talked to a lot of you after the session. But if you did wrestle with it and grapple with what this double slit experiment meant, you really need to get that. I told you that that is the most important science experiment that's ever been done in human history. The scientists themselves called it the experiment that broke reality. And in that experiment, we came to discover that this world is not set in concrete. It is not a mechanistic, linear, closed universe like the Newtonian science taught us, but it is a universe that is alive. The universe, the energy, it's alive. It's in vibration. It is a world of frequency. It is a reality that transcends what we can see in the physical domain. And because we understand, and to the extent I should say that we understand this unseen world, the universe that you can see becomes much more malleable. It becomes much more fashionable. And so when we change the way we see by the mere act of observation and where we place our focus, that can change our lives and change our world. And so then I talked in the last session, about how that we believe differently. And in the last session, I talked to you about the power of intention. And I've shared with you the scientific evidence of how that intention has inside it the capacity to literally create physical matter, to literally change the world around us, not just in a metaphorical way, but in an actual way. Intention makes things happen. Intention changes things. And I gave you a number of scientific experiments that have been replicated over and over with the academics that have brought it to a level where nobody can honestly dispute it unless they're just putting their fingers in their ears and la-la-lawing because they cannot stand and bear to hear the truth. What you think and focus upon matters. What you set your mind on and move toward matters. I believe that we're going to be shocked when we discover one day the latent power that has been inside us all along that we didn't even recognize. I've talked about my episode back in 2012 when I was carried to the emergency room, and my blood pressure was so low that when the paramedics got to my patio, they couldn't find the blood pressure. I woke up in the ambulance with a young girl holding the paddles up above me, and I said, whoa, wait, you're not about to use that, are you? And she said, I'm just getting ready. I said, well, stay ready, but stand down. And we got to the emergency room, and I kept lapsing into unconsciousness, and then I would wake up, and I'll confess that there was a reason my blood pressure kept dropping, and I would lapse into unconsciousness. It was a reason that did not make Melanie or the nurses happy. Is Andrew in here? My son Andrew, has he stepped out of here? All right, well, he was standing there beside me, and so were my other children. And listen, you guys know me, or some of you kind of know me, but you know me well enough to know this won't surprise you. So I would wake up, and I would come from unconsciousness with the blood pressure so low they couldn't find it, and I would start making my clever quips. And my children would laugh, and that only made it worse, because now they fueled my sense of humor. And so I would say something else, and I would laugh, and the kids would laugh, but the act of laughing would make my blood pressure drop, and I would pass out. And then I would come to, and I would start talking again. And I would make the kids laugh. They were all scared to death. Melanie failed to see the humor in it. She failed to see the humor in it. She kept saying, "Shut up, shut up." But she didn't understand. I often lack the capacity, the ability to shut up. So I would say something else funny, and my kids would laugh, and I would laugh, and I would pass out again. And the nurses kept saying, "Mr. McVeigh," I remember once said, "Mr. McVeigh, you got to stop it and quit talking." And I remember lying there saying, "But you don't know what you're asking me to do." And then I turned to my kids and I said, "If I die lying here, be sure to tell everybody your daddy laughed himself to death." And we all started laughing, and I passed out again. Now, there was a moment at which I was not breathing. I had stopped breathing, and it turned real serious. I only came to discover what happened later when it was over and I was home. But in that moment, when I stopped breathing, my dear wife leaned over right in my face, and with great intensity of desire, now listen carefully, I'm making a serious point, of desire and focused intention. What do we call that at church? Faith and prayer. She looked at me and she said, "Steve, breathe." I don't remember hearing her say that at all. But the first thing I remember, and I do remember going, and opening my eyes, and they were all around me saying, "Breathe." The kids were saying, "Dad, breathe." Amy was saying, "In, out, breathe, in, out." And what I say to you is the power of my wife's intention and the strength of her desire and the fact she just bullies me all the time anyway. People that know me up close and personal, you know how henpecked I am, right? Yeah, right. I've told her since, I said, "You spoke life back into me." But you know what? I thought about it later, and I think maybe she did. I think that's probably what she did. This power of intention, directed, focused intention, by intention, we make things happen. Now, in this session, I want to talk to you. We believe differently. That's about the power of intention, or as we would say at church, faith. But now I want to talk tonight about the power of our words, because the words that come out of your mouth are pregnant with power, divine power. I've heard weirdos at church say this. If the shoe fits. I've heard weirdos at church, the charismaniacs, not charismatics. I love charismatic Christians. I've learned so much from my charismatic friends. But you know what I mean, the charismaniacs that give the rest of you a bad name. I've heard them teach and talk about it, and I thought, ugh. But as I've said many times, the content of what they were saying was for the most part exactly on mark. It was right. There is a power in words that most of us in this world have failed to recognize. And I mean a physical, literal power in our words. This is a guy that has done some amazing stuff. He was born in 1943, and I noted as I was preparing for our conference this weekend that coincidentally it was 4 years ago, day before yesterday, that he died. 4 years ago, day before yesterday, that he died. This man, Masaru Emoto, was a Japanese author, a researcher, a photographer, an entrepreneur who did a lot of studies and introduced us to some very meaningful truth related to words. He decided to focus on water. And so Emoto claimed that human consciousness could have an effect on the molecular structure of water. Now, you already know, because of what we've studied before in earlier sessions, about the power of observation and how that you can cause a wave to collapse into a particle. You can change physical reality by your thought. But Emoto went on to show that we can do it also with our words. There is creative ability and destructive ability in the words that we speak. His position evolved over years, but from the time that he began his work in his early studies, he explored his belief that water could react to positive thoughts and words, and he even did experiments to see if polluted water could be cleaned through prayer and positive visualization. Understand, when I say prayer, I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about our Heavenly Father, we just, in Jesus' name, just. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about elevated desire and focused intention. And he demonstrated that could change water. I mentioned Lynn McTaggart in an experiment that I participated in online with her in a group. But Lynn McTaggart has done this with water, and she has proven with studies that she has done that you can change the pH balance of water just by focused intention. Now, hers is all about intention, but Emoto went on to show that it can be done with words. If you want to see some interesting stuff, get a copy of, he wrote several volumes under this title, but get a copy of his book called Messages from Water, which contains photographs of ice crystals and descriptions, I'll mention a few of them now, descriptions of experiments that he did with those ice crystals. Emoto believed that water is the blueprint for our reality, our physical reality, and that emotional energy and vibration could change the physical structure of water. So what he did is he took water and performed these water crystal experiments that involved exposing pure water, distilled water, pure water, all from the same source, exposing the water to different words, pictures, music, and then he would take the water and he would freeze it, and as it was freezing, he would examine the patterns of the crystals with microscopic photography to see what was happening in the crystallization of the water as it froze. He was very meticulous, as scientists usually are. So he used water that had been distilled twice so that it was guaranteed to be pure. And as I said, he did things like play different kinds of music in front of the containers of water. He did things like he would tape words, write down words and tape the words to the jars of the water. He would take the water and set it in front of beautiful art. And interestingly enough, the water responded differently to different things to which it was exposed. Energy affects matter. In fact, energy is matter. Matter is energy. E equals mc squared, the law of gravitation, and by Newton, and then Einstein's theory of relativity. Energy is matter, just expressing itself in a different way. Emoto showed that words That's not my slide. Somebody went rogue on me. Word. Let a man control your earpiece and you don't know where you'll stop. Emoto showed that words could change the molecular structure of the water. Now listen to why this, you'll hear why this is important. There are words that are high vibration words, high frequency words. Remember, we've talked about this. The high frequencies are the positive words, words of blessing, positive words of love and affirmation, gratitude, appreciation, all of these things. High frequency in those words. And again, I said and then there are low frequency words. Words, that are insulting and degrading. So there are high frequency words, low frequency words, and I've talked already about how interesting it is that our culture has unconsciously adapted to that. It's almost like in our collective consciousness. We know that if a person feels good, you would never say, "You really seem down today." No, you would say, "You really seem up today." Man, I'm feeling high today. I'm feeling up. I'm feeling, it's a bright world today. I know Canadians just legalized marijuana. I know Mike has told me that earlier. And if I find out you've been smoking it, we're going to have a talk about it. Because there is no stopping. I can't handle you straight. But on the other hand, if you can slip some across the border and get it in Nate's hand, it might calm him down a little. Can you help a brother out? And so our culture has adapted to this. You seem down today. Well, Emoto took this twice distilled water and he performed this experiment where he would speak words, high vibration words, to the water. The water, listen again, the water all came from the same source. It was pure water, all from the same source. And so Emoto would speak words of blessing, if you will, positive words, uplifting words, positive words, high frequency words. He would speak it to the water. And then he took pictures of the crystals in the water as they froze. And I want you to take a look at these crystals. These are actual pictures of the crystals. And beside each picture are the words that Emoto repeated and spoke to the water that formed these crystals. Notice the symmetry. When he spoke, "I love you, thank you, compassion." Notice the symmetry. Some of it looks almost like a snowflake, doesn't it? Notice the beauty of it, the pattern in it, the art, if you will, embedded in those crystals. But then there were other jars of water that came from the exact same source, but to those jars of water, he spoke extremely negative words. And with a microscopic lens, he took photographs when he cursed and spoke degrading, insulting, low vibration words as it froze. And then he took the pictures of the crystals. Notice the absolute lack of symmetry in those pictures. Notice the dark spots. No symmetry, no beauty, chaotic disorder. And again, he's not the only one to do this test. He's the one who brought it into the forefront. And for some reason, when it's been replicated, it always works this way. That when words, or water I should say, was exposed to positive speech and positive words and positive loving expressions, there was this beautiful symmetrical crystal that would form. But when negative words, degrading words, words that are used to diminish, to reduce, to insult, when those words were used, you ended up with crystals that were absolutely chaotic, in total disarray. This was speaking to a jar of water. Now, brace yourself. Your body is 2/3 water. Your physical body is 2/3 water. Think about the power that words must have over your own body. I mean, if it did this to water in a jar, what do words do to us? What does it do? I grew up being told at school that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never harm me. But we know now that's not true at all. Words can be very harmful. I mentioned earlier today the school that took 2 plants that were both in healthy condition and put them in the foyer where the students came into school every day, and they were both in the same light, got the same amount of water and the same amount of nutrients, but they told the students, when you come in every day, I want you to say nice things to the plant on the right, and I want you to say ugly things, be mean, act like a bully to the plant on the left. And over a period of time, the plant on the right flourished, and the plant on the left withered. And they used it as a lesson to say to the children, here's what happens when you bully people. It was a good lesson. A lot of us had grandmothers who used to talk to her flowers, right? And now we know there's something to that. Now we know. And it's really interesting. They've proven that. They've proven it. Scientists have gone into the realm of botany, and they've had people raise flowers, and they would have people lean over and talk sweetly to their flowers, and others would just ignore their flowers and do the bare minimum. And the flowers that had been spoken kindly to flourished. And you know what the skeptics say? This is what we've talked about before. You know what? The skeptics will always find a reason to disregard and ignore the evidence. And the skeptics actually had the audacity to say, well, the reason the flowers did better that were spoken to is because of the carbon dioxide that came out of the person's mouth that was talking. They could not accept this metaphysical outcome. They couldn't accept it. They're scientific materialists. It's no different from the fundamentalist religious people you've been to church with in your life. They're not going to accept it. Some things they're just not going to accept. I already mentioned the plant that when the butterflies try to eat it, it secretes a fluid, an oil to keep the butterflies from eating it. And the scientists put a recording of munching butterflies beside the plant and started secreting the oil. And there was no butterfly even around, but the plant was exposed to the sound of a butterfly munching on leaves. We talked about these things. Sounds have vibration. The words that I speak to you right now, my words that I'm speaking to you have a frequency. There is a frequency here. Sound has a frequency. I am at the age now where my marriage is becoming difficult on some days because my doctor has told me that I no longer hear things above a certain frequency. And so there is not one day of my life that it does not insert itself into the harmony of the relationship I have with a woman who loves me. Because she'll say something and I didn't hear her. Sir, and as time has passed, she becomes less and less understanding about the fact that I didn't hear her. Is there any other martyr man like me in the room who can I get a witness? God bless you. Yeah, I feel your pain. I'm with you. The way we do it now is she'll say, do you want to take the car to the store? And if I don't understand it, I'll just say whatever I heard. And I might say, do I want to put the jar on the floor? Because that's what I heard. And sometimes she'll laugh and sometimes she'll roll her eyes at me, and a lot of times she'll say, "Get hearing aids." To which I will say, I already bought hearing aids, and I did, and we couldn't get them to work right, and I can't find any doctor in town that'll adjust them. And as recently as, has it been 3 days ago, she said, "Consider that money lost and go buy you some new hearing aids." And I said, "Huh?" But my doctor tells me this is a frequency thing, that above a certain frequency, I can't hear the sound anymore. The words that I'm speaking to you, there's a frequency going out right now. You know, of course, if you look up the audio spectrum on the internet, you will see that what we hear with our human ears, the best of us, is just a sliver of what can be heard out there. I mean, you know, the dogs can hear better than you at certain ranges, right? I mean, we can't hear a lot of noise that's in this room with us right now. Do you hear the ball game going on? You don't. But it is. It's playing on the radio right now, but you can't hear those signals coming through. If you had the right receiver in here, called a radio, and you tuned it into that frequency, you could hear it, but you're not hearing on that frequency, and so you don't hear it. There's a lot of things you can't hear, but frequency is a vibrational pattern. You've seen the waveform when you record things on your computer. Sound is a vibration. Sound is a frequency, and listen, they've come to know there is power in that sound itself. And you combine that with intention, and man, you got the granddaddy mojo power right there then. Because you've had the power of the words themselves combined with the intention, you got a tool in your hands there for good or for bad. It's a tool for good or for bad. I mean, seems to me, I remember somewhere reading that the creation of everything that exists began with somebody saying, "Let there be." And this universe was spoken into existence. Am I right? People ask me sometimes, do you believe in the Big Bang? And I know it irritates some Christians when I answer, yes, I do. I do believe in the Big Bang. But I believe the Big Bang was a loud voice. And I believe the Big Bang sounded something like, "Let there be." And creation began to ripple out across the cosmos, and it's still reaching out in every direction. Creation ain't through, folks. New stars are dying and being born. Galaxies are being created still. Let there be. It goes on in perpetuity. That's why we need to be thinking about the words we speak, because the words we speak have power, and the words we speak are enduring, because, listen, words are energy, thoughts are energy, and energy can transfer from one form to the other. E equals mc squared. It's the theory of relativity. Energy can transform from one form to another, but the energy never ceases to exist. The energy is eternal because the energy is an expression of the matrix. The energy is an expression of the divine energy, which you and I know as God. Always has been, always will be, never will not be. Your words are a part of that energy. So what we speak has great power. Being belittled by words can greatly harm you, and some of you growing up heard negative words, and you suffer the pain and consequence of it to this day. It's not irrevocable. That can change, but I'm saying as it is at this moment, some of you still bear the image inside you of negative words. You can change that, and you can change that for others, and you can change that for yourself. You can be blessed and helped and healed by words. Words can greatly help you. They can greatly heal you. There's power in words. In the quantum world, the energetic vibration of words has distinct and measurable results, as Emoto showed us. And so we better be careful, little mouth, what you say, because it's more than a passing word. This, "I didn't really mean it," that won't fly anymore in the quantum life, because we know better. Check out Emoto. He's got a lot of good stuff on this. He said, "Words are vibrations of nature. Therefore, beautiful words create beautiful nature. Ugly words create ugly nature. This is the root of the universe. Water is the mirror that has the ability to show us what we cannot see. It is the blueprint for our reality, which can change with a single positive thought. All it takes is faith if you're open to it. Intention. Water has a memory and carries within it our thoughts and prayers. As you yourself are water, no matter where you are, your prayers will be carried to the rest of the world. Pretty amazing, huh? So the words you speak have power. When Melanie stood over me in the ER, and I thought I might be going to die too. They had me on a gurney, and at one point I remember saying, God, with all kidding aside, all joking aside, am I going to die here tonight? Am I going to die here tonight? And I tell you the exact prayer I prayed. I really did. I remember the exact words. I said, in fact, Melanie had asked me out on the patio when I'd been unconscious and came to. She said, are you scared? She said, are you scared? And I said, of what? Heaven? No, I'm not scared. Wrong answer. Some of you know the rest of the story. I was still on the patio, and the EMT guys hadn't got there, and she leaned right over in my face, and she yelled at me in anger and said, don't you die on me! And then she said these profoundly spiritual words. If you see Jesus, you tell him he's got all eternity to be with you. I need you right here, right now. And so an hour later, when I was in the hospital, and I thought, Lord, am I going to die? Am I dying up here tonight? And then I said this. I said, Lord, you know I'm ready. I'm not scared to go. And Melanie tells you, she thinks I have a morbid acceptance of death. But she thinks my whole family's like that. And it's just the way our family has always been. Death doesn't scare me or threaten me at all. But that night, I said, Lord, am I going to die? And then I said, Lord, you know I'm not scared to die. I said, here are my exact words. I said, but Lord, look at her. You see her face. I don't want to leave her right now. What would that do to her? She needs me here. Will you let me stay here? And he did. So remember that next time you can't hear what I said. And all the half-deaf men in the house said, what? Words actually have power. So now what have we talked about? Let's combine it together, and then we're going to take a break for a minute. What have we talked about? We've talked about observation and how that by the act of watching and observing, you affect outcome. We talked about expectation and how your intention and what you believe is going to happen according to your faith. So be it unto you. However you think it's going to be, that's how it's going to be. This is an eternal truth, and it's more. This is found in much more than just the Bible. This is ancient wisdom from many religions. And so now tonight we're talking about your words and how that what you say has tremendous power. So the sum total of it all then is observation plus expectation plus conversation. What you look at and what you intend and what you say leads to equals manifestation. It doesn't get more practical than this. It doesn't get more practical than this. What you believe and what you say, what you see, what you believe, and what you say is going to determine what you get. So be aware of that. So just like our observation, our perception, our intention, and our words have energy, so they create our experience of daily life. So as I've said, we know now that these three things, observation, expectation, and communication, will lead to the manifestation. Guys, it's not magic. You're going to say sometime, well, why is it working for me? Because it's not magic. Because of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Because we live in a universe where physical matter though it can and sometimes does, often does not instantly change. It gradually changes. I mean, I'm thinking of a story in the scripture where a nobleman came to Jesus and said, I'm a man under authority, and if I tell somebody to do something, they do it, and I don't even have to be there for it to happen, and I've got a sick son. Would you speak from where you are? He's back home, and you can heal him from here without having to go back there. And Jesus spoke the words of healing toward that man's son, directed his intention of healing toward that man's son from a distance. And when that man went home, the Bible records that he talked to his servants and discovered that it was at that same hour that the boy began to get well. Did you notice what I said? Jesus had focused intention and desire, and he spoke it. And when the man got home, they said, he's getting better. He started to get better at this hour. But it wasn't. It didn't happen that way. When he touched the blind man's eyes and said, how you seeing now? And the guy said, well, it looks blurry. I mean, I have to admit, it's not total dark anymore, but it looks like men are trees. It's blurry. And Jesus said, well, let's give it a second dose. And so don't get frustrated because, you know, you can't instantly make everything change. I'm not saying it can't happen that way. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't always, even with the life of Jesus. So hold sustained intention and elevated desire and stand your ground and wait. This one that said to the disciples, all these things I'm doing that you're so wowed by, one day you'll do greater things than these. I wish I could tell you all about it now, but you're not able to handle it. But one day a teacher will come and you'll understand. Now we're there. This same one told the Apostle Peter, he said, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and in the ether, that is, the field. And whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in the field. You'll make it collapse from wave to particle form. You've got the key for it. Now, sadly, the Roman Catholics believed that that promise was uniquely given to Peter, but it wasn't. That authority, that ability, that power was given to all of us. We all possess the power to prevent or propel the possibilities in waveform and superposition to move from potentiality into actuality, to convert from energy into matter. We all have that ability. Again, don't get frustrated because it's not instant. Could be, but sometimes it's not. It takes time. Your words have such power. There's another place in Scripture where Jesus, and whether a person was a Christian or not, they ought to listen to what Jesus had to say about it. You know why? Because the guy that's doing the stuff probably knows more about it than you do if you're not doing the stuff, right? You know what I mean? Even if a person was not a Christ follower, even if they didn't believe in Jesus, if they believed the historical record, and I don't simply mean the Bible, I mean other historical records like Josephus, who referred to Jesus as a man and then added, although whether it be right to call him a man, I know not, for he did many wonderful things that no man has ever done. Josephus, not a Christian, said that about Jesus. So even if a person was not a Christian, they would do well to listen to somebody who had lived this quantum life the way Jesus lived it. And Jesus said this. He said, by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. That's Matthew 12:37. Justified or condemned by what? By who? If you're a legalistic religionist, you'll say, well, by God. It's by God. But no. He says you're going to be justified or condemned by your words. What's going to justify or condemn you? Life itself. Your words are a prophecy of what your life is going to be. How many times have folks said, oh, brother, I can see what kind of day this is going to be. I can tell already. I just needed to stay in bed. This is going to be a horrible day. And guess what? According to your faith, so be it unto you. And at the end of the day, they think they're so smart because they say, see, I told you that's how it was going to be. Well, that's how you made it be. By your words, you were condemned. Life will agree. The universe is a mirror. The matrix, the kingdom, the ether, the world around you just responds. Your words stir energy into motion to facilitate the things you speak. We are not victims who are watching life happen to us. Let me say it again. We are not victims who watch life happen to us. We are not victims who are watching life happen to us, unless that's what you want to be. If you want to be that, you can. The way you believe it's going to be is the way it's going to be, according to your faith, so let it be unto you. But as I said earlier, don't create a personal storm and then complain when you get wet. Some people say, oh, my life always turns out this way. It always happens like that. It always. I'm always. And then they keep perpetuating that same thing by their words, and they don't understand why, and they don't know for what reason they can't change it. It's because of their great faith. They have great faith. For bad stuff. And they keep affirming it. They confess it with their mouth, and they believe it in their heart. And so it moves from potentiality into actuality. The man who's known as the wisest man that ever lived said this. He said, Solomon, he said, the one who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. I wish I had learned that early in life. I went to old school. I'm an old guy. I got paddled all the way into high school. And it was always for the same thing. My mouth. Just like on the gurney when I couldn't make myself shut up and I kept passing out, I was always that way. My English teacher in the 10th grade would more than once take me down the hall to the principal's office where I would get paddled. But on the bright side, the teacher and I would laugh all the way there. I'm serious. The one who guards his mouth and tongue keeps himself out of trouble. I didn't know that. How about this one? Proverbs, book of wisdom. Wholesome speech is a tree of life. Listen, you don't have to stay trapped in a desperate situation. You can change. In this ground of being, which is the word Paul Tillich used, the theologian Paul Tillich, to describe God, which Max Planck would call the matrix, which Einstein would call the universe, which Lynn McTaggart would call the field, which Greg Braden would call the divine field, which Paul the apostle would call in Christ. This field, this ultimate reality, in that place, your life is sourced. And in that place, no problemo. Everything's okay. Mike, sometime in a break, you got that song, Don't Worry About a Thing, Every Little Thing's Gonna Be All Right. Anybody, y'all remember that song? Yeah, Bob Marley. You Canadians probably like that song these days.
It's now all right.
Well, let me move it out of the carnality, out of Canadian carnality into Christian mysticism. Julian of Norwich wrote her revelations of what she heard God say, and one of the most profound I have quoted over and over and over. And it was when she experienced and heard the voice of God, as I've described to you, having heard it, many of you have heard it, and the voice said, all is well. All is well, and all shall be well. Oh, may we develop the observation skills, the ability to take the long look, to look beyond the temporality of this illusion in which we live part-time, because after all, we're popping in and out of visibility 20,000 times a nanosecond. May we have the ability to look into that divine field of pure love, that divine matrix, that kingdom of God, that ether. May we have the ability to look into that place and see it. You ever meditate? I'm going to talk about that in the Quantum Life group that we'll have online. I'm going to teach how to meditate going forward. Not right away, but going forward. I'm going to do retreats on meditation going forward. I've mentioned it, and those in my morning group know I've talked about it. And I thought I was going to do it here in St. Petersburg, but the hotel or bed and breakfast place where I was going to do it just kept frustrating me until finally I said, forget it, I'll do it another time. But if you've meditated, despite all of your wrestlings with the monkey mind, and you know what I mean, that hyperactive mind that's hard to be stilled, if you've successfully meditated, there have been moments, however fleeting they might have been, when you lost awareness of personhood, and you lost awareness of space, and you lost awareness of time, and you simply had an awareness of the eternal now. And in that moment, however brief it might have been, in that eternal now, you were filled with a sense of peace and a sense that everything's okay. In that place, in that moment, I'm telling you, Hurricane Michael could have blown right across your desk or the chair you were sitting in, and you wouldn't have worried about it. Because in that gray space, in that place of transcendence, in that moment of enlightenment, in that moment of conscious union with the universe, with God, with Christ, in that moment, you knew that you knew that you knew that no matter what was going on the surface in the world of temporality, in the ultimate reality, which is source, everything is well. Everything is well, and everything shall be well. We need to learn to live in that place, and I'm going to teach that going forward. I'm not going to teach it in big groups like this. A group like this is not conducive to it. When I have groups where I teach this stuff, it'll be maybe 20 people at the most, because we're going to practice it and talk about it. Those of you in the morning coffee group, do you remember the morning that I did that brief meditation with you about awareness? You remember that? I know we're recording, but Mike, I'll repeat what they say. I want you, first of all, how many of you in my morning group, when we did that exercise, had never done anything like that before? Raise your hand. All right. Now, I'd like to hear from those of you who had never done that before first, and tell me in a sentence or short word or two, what did you experience when we practiced that exercise? A few of you tell me. What did you experience? What did it seem like, feel like? How did you relate to it? Say it out louder. Very peaceful. Tranquil. Weightlessness. Feeling of love. What? Union.
You called it an exercise in awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's been sitting in my file to watch for a long time.
The common denominator that you see from the responses of the people that participated in it then is that it anchored them in a safe and secure and calm place where they were aware of everything being okay. Now, or as Julian Dort said, all is well, and all shall be well. Or, as St. Bob Marley said, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing's going to be all right. Or, as our beloved brother Farrell said, think of happiness like a room without a roof. But you got to talk it. You live in a temporal reality, a temporal world where you're sensory driven right now. And I've told you this morning, I can watch that scene in the movie Misery where Kathy Bates smashes his leg with a sledgehammer, and I've seen it 10 times, and I still cringe. I still cringe. I know it's not even real, but it affects me. I can watch my favorite movie, which if you've seen it, you're either going to say you loved it or you're going to say, good heavens, what did you like about that movie? You hated it. I can watch the movie The Tree of Life with Brad Pitt, and there's never a time when it goes off I'm not wiping tears off of my cheeks. Never. Anytime I feel despondent, discouraged, out of control, fearful, I'll put that movie on and watch that movie, and it brings me back to center. Not everybody shares that opinion. That's not a middle ground movie. That you either love it or you hate it, and some people hate it. But my point being, I live in a world of temporality, and my senses can be triggered to react. But if I'm living in a whirlwind, if I'm living in a tumultuous, storm, my words can cause it to be perpetuated. My words can sustain the situation and make it keep lasting and lasting and lasting. I've got to change the way I talk, and the way I talk can actually change the way I think. You don't have to stay trapped. Stop saying I want and start saying I am and I have. Speak from a finished work orientation, not a soulful longing. Everything exists in potential. There's nothing out of bounds for you. It all is there waiting. It's up to you what collapses into particle form. Stop saying, I'll never be like them. I'll never be able to. Nothing ever works for me. Why does this always happen? You know by now the reason, the answer. It's because of your great faith. If things keep on, for terrible things, if things keep on going wrong for you over and over and over, you need to look inward. Because I promise you, I will speak on behalf of Almighty God, the Creator, and tell you in His name, the universe is not against you. The world is not against you. Quit creating a mess and blaming God for it. Start saying, let there be. Start lining yourself up with the eternal frequency. Quit being so pseudo-spiritual and saying, I'm waiting on God and I'm believing. Well, God's waiting on you. You're saying, God, will you do this? And He's going, you do it. You do it. Lord, I'm a paraplegic. I'm a cripple lying on this mat 38 days, 38 years by this pool at Bethesda. You want to get well? Well, there's nobody here to put me in the water, the magic miracle water. Do you want to get well? Well, of course I want to get well. Well, then take up your bed and walk. Take up my bed? You mean stand up, pick up my bed? I thought it was all you. Now you're acting like it's me. Is it me or you? I'm waiting and trusting you. Take up your bed and walk. Do you get the point I'm making? There are wacko people out there, wacko mentality in the religious world say, well, it's got to be God. You're teaching this quantum stuff I need to do. Well, now you're taking it off of God. You're putting it on to me. I'm telling you, take up your bed and walk. And if taking up your bed sounds like too much work for you, then all love I say to you, then just lay there, but quit your bitching about it. By choosing your words, you can decide every day of your life how you want to frame your life. Reach inside to bring the change to the outside. What do you see when you look in the mirror? Do you see yourself for who you really are? Do you see the true you? Stop looking in the mirror and seeing a lie. Look at yourself in the mirror and see the person that you truly are. Visualize it, see it, know it, say it, believe it, intend it, and keep doing that until it collapses into particle form and it becomes your actuality. There was a wonderful experiment done by a lady named Ellen Langer. She's a Harvard, or was a Harvard psychologist. She and a group of graduate students did this great experiment with a group of elderly people. She wrote a book about it called Counterclockwise. I want to get the book. I've not read it. I've just read about this experiment and some others that she did. But Langer wanted to see what she could do to help a group of elderly people and how she could somehow maybe make them be young again. They were all in their 70s, and she knew she couldn't bring the past, bring them into the past. So she decided she was going to sort of bring the past to them. So in 1989, she decided she was going to create or recreate the world in the 1950s and ask these people in their 70s to stay in there and live as though it were over 2 decades earlier. So they go into this hotel and they designed the interior of it to look identical to the 1950s. There was a black and white TV in there, old furniture, and magazines lying around on the tables scattered around from the 1950s. You can read the book, but just to be succinct, I'll read you one report of it from the New York Times magazine. One writer said it this way. So then he said, 8 men in their 70s stepped out of a van in front of a converted monastery in New Hampshire. They slowly shuffled forward. A few of them arthritically stooped, a couple with canes. Then they passed through the door and they entered a time warp. Perry Como crooned on the vintage radio. Ed Sullivan welcomed guests on the black and white TV. Everything inside, including the books on the shelves, the magazines, everything was fit to conjure up the 1950s. The renovated place became a home to these men, all over 70 years old. When they arrived at the building, they were told they should not merely discuss the past era, but to act and talk as if they were actually their younger selves. And Langer told them, we have good reason to believe if you are successful at this, you'll feel like you did back in the 50s. And from that moment on, they were treated like they were back in the 1950s. Despite the fact that several were being stooped over and having to use canes for walking, they were not helped at all in taking their belongings up the stairs. Take them up one shirt at a time if you have to, they were told. Their days were spent listening to radio shows, watching movies, discussing sports, and other, quote, current events from that time period. They were not allowed to talk about any events that happened after the 1950s, and they referred to themselves, their families, their careers as if it were still the 1950s. By the end of 5 days, these men demonstrated noticeable improvement in their hearing, eyesight, memory, dexterity, and appetite. Those who had arrived using canes and depended on the help of their children left the building under their own power and were carrying their own suitcases. 63% of them now had better intelligence test scores at the end of the experiment than they did when they had taken the same test at the beginning. 4 independent volunteers who knew nothing about the study looked at before and after photos of the men in the experimental group, and it's been 5 days, and they estimated that those in the after photos were an average of 2 years younger than the ones in the before photos. And it was only 5 days difference. On the last day of the study, Langer wrote in her book, men who had seemed so frail just days before ended up playing an impromptu touch football game on the front lawn. By expecting them to function independently and engage with them as individuals, young individuals, rather than old people, they gave those older men the opportunity to see themselves differently, and it had an absolute effect on them, even biologically. Obviously, it changed their appearance, their dexterity, their intelligence. It changed all the medical tests that had been done on them going in and then again coming out showed improvement just by changing their mindset, thinking differently, talking differently. I'm going to ask you again, how do you talk to yourself? The truth for many of us is that we would never be so calloused and unkind as to talk to somebody else the way we talk to ourselves. You show a lot more grace and mercy to other people than you do yourself sometimes. What is the internal narrative that you tell about yourself? You need to start listening to what's being said in your mind, because a lot of that stuff that's being said is not true, and if you're not careful, you'll believe it. Stop talking negatively about yourself. Don't do it. Broadcast good words to yourself about yourself. That damnable world of legalistic religion has made you think there would be something prideful about that, and caused you to believe that humility would insist that you look at yourself as nothing, and you degrade yourself and you put yourself down. How dare you insult the masterpiece created by the one who made you? According to the scriptures, you are a work of art. Talk like it. Act like it. Think like it. Stop believing the lies. Proverbs 16:24 says, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy to the body. Just a change in attitude and words can change your life. A change in disposition is a change in frequency, and it is to raise your vibration from low to high. Patch Adams was a children's doctor who helped children get well by dressing up like a clown and making balloon animals and making them laugh. In one study, men who had terminal cancer were put in a hospital, older men, where they were able to watch funny movies of their choice. And one man particularly chose the Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges and things like that, and there were measurable improvements in him. They have absolutely proven again and again and again that laughter and positive words help alleviate pain. Changes you on the inside. Proverbs 18:10 says, words satisfy the soul as food satisfies the stomach. The right words on a person's lips bring salvation. I said earlier that when the Creator caused the universe to appear in physical form, he only spoke and the frequency became matter. Words became matter. Your words have the ability to change the environment. You've been around people that are Debbie Downers, right? Remember that character? You've been around people whose words can bring the atmosphere down, and people whose words can bring the vibration frequency up. I want to be around people that make me sing, I'm feeling those good vibrations. What you say, what you see, what you think, what you express matters. It causes the wave to collapse into the particle. Don't listen to the naysayers. If necessary, get away from them. And if you can't get away from them, refute what they say. When they speak something that is not true, you counteract it with the truth. Don't let it hang out there in air. the negativity. Don't let it hang there. You respond back. Speak something true. Don't let them pee in your pool. Change it. Change it. Change the water. And that's true even if it's a voice in your own brain. See it, then say it. If you keep saying, well, this old junk car keeps breaking down, or we'll be broke all of our lives, or I catch every red light on this street every time I drive down it, or I get the flu every winter, we'll go in peace because you're calling forth an outcome. Folks, I know this sounds like weird religion to some of you, but it's science.
Sounds like truth.
It is truth. When you speak, you are praying. What you're saying, you are professing. I'm not going to say, oh, man, I'm getting older, my body is this and my body's that, this is killing me. I tell you what, when I walk down here at the bay in the mornings, when I walk down there, I say out loud, I look around to make sure nobody's near. I say out loud, I am healthy, I am strong. People would think I was crazy. I'm walking along and I'm saying out loud, I am healthy. And I might say it 5 or 10 times, the same things. I am healthy. I am strong. I'll say things like I am abundance. I am peace. I'll say the things that I want to see manifest in my life, and I say it till I feel it. And I keep saying it. Sometimes I'll hear a voice say, yeah, right, if you're healthy, why's your knee hurting like crazy while you're trying to walk? And I'll say, well, I'm a healthy person who's going to walk slower for a little while. And I'll slow down, and it's amazing how many times I'll walk it off. We've said it with my wife, Melanie. Healthy, healthy, healthy. Because you haven't seen something manifest in your experience yet doesn't nullify the fact that it's true. You've got to look, take the long look beyond the temporal, look at the transcendent, and you've got to see things as they are. And you got to hang on to that and stand strong in that until it does manifest. I used to mock that, and I used to say things. I'd hear some of my charismatic friends talk about the power of words, and I've actually said this. I came across an old blog I wrote some back 6 years ago, and I said something to the effect of, well, I don't think God is so hypersensitive that he's going to respond to my silly words by cursing me. I said, he sees beyond my words and he knows my heart. So my words, chill out. My negative words might bother you, I said, but I think God knows my heart, and he's not going to be, pissed off and cause it to all come apart from me because I didn't say the right words. But you see, now I know my orientation was wrong. It's not God who reacts to those negative words. It's life that reacts to those negative words. It's my own body. It's my own mind that reacts to those negative words. So the negative words create outcome. It's not God doing it to me. It's me doing it to me. This is science. Do you want to change your world? Well, change your words. The best evidence of your faith, or your intention, as we say in the lab, is to appropriate, your best evidence of your faith to appropriate the best life you have to offer is to speak the right words. Remember, Scripture says faith is substance. Intention, or the scientists would say intention, is matter of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You can convert energy into matter, into a material reality, by consistently speaking the right way as you hold a sustained, elevated expectation to match the words. You might wonder if your faith or your belief is strong enough to make it happen. You might say, well, where do we find the faith we need to be able to see the kind of manifestation that we want to see? Where do I find that kind of faith? I used to say that. Back in 2012, when I was in the hospital at Vanderbilt Hospital, I got so sick of people that knew this and I didn't, saying to me, well, just believe. Just believe. Just have faith. And some of you may have heard me say it. I actually used to say, well, thank you very much for telling me I need more faith. Pray tell, where am I supposed to get it? I can't generate it. If I don't have the faith, where am I supposed to get this faith you're telling me I'm supposed to have? Well, now I know. where to find it. Listen, I know you're tired. The day's been long, but don't miss what I'm about to say. You want to know where to find faith? You need more. You say, I need more faith. I wish I could believe. But where can I find this faith? Paul said in Romans 10:8, here's the message concerning faith that we proclaim. And here's what he said. The word is near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart. Paul the apostle said, and then he said, that's what we have to say about faith. You want to have greater faith, Paul says, you can find it in your words, in your mouth, and in your heart, your intention. So if you say, I wish I could believe, Steve, I wish I could believe for a better outcome. I wish I could believe for improvement, advance. I wish I could believe for that, but I just don't feel it. I'm not telling you to feel it. I'm telling you to say it. Speak it. Paul, the Bible says, the message concerning faith that we proclaim is that the word, it's in your mouth. Speak it, speak it, speak it. That manifestation is in your mouth. You don't need to try to have more faith. Just start saying the right things. And then you'll discover that it's been there all along down in your heart. And then as you continue to speak it and embrace it and believe it and expect it, it'll find its way into your experience. Jesus said, if you speak to a tree and say, be planted in the sea, it will obey you. Jesus spoke to wind and waves. Jesus spoke to trees. You remember? Jesus spoke to diseased bodies. Listen to my next statement. Jesus spoke to things. When I was miraculously healed on February 7, 2017 by a man that didn't act religious at all, he came into my cabin on a cruise. Where's Ruth? Ruth was on that cruise, right? In fact, we ate dinner at the same table on that cruise. Anybody else was on that cruise? You were? Yeah, that's right. Megan was on that cruise. You don't know this, but I've been passing out up to 3 times a day, and on February 7 on that cruise ship, I had passed out 3 times, and I spoke, and Ian Andrews came to me and said, he's a British man, and said, can I help? And I've told you all this, and long story short, we went to my cabin, and I said, I'm not going to take a dive. I'm not going to have some kind of Holy Ghost conniption fit to stroke your ego, so if you want that, this could be a problem. No, he says, I'm fine. And we went into my cabin, and you know what? I don't remember him ever saying the name Jesus. I know for sure he didn't read the Bible. He just talked to my body. He just talked to my body. And I'd been passing out so frequently that Melanie thought I might be dying. And truthfully, I didn't say it to her, but I did too. That was February 7th, and I haven't passed out one time since. He spoke to my body. We're saying, God, will you heal this situation, the physical problem? Jesus didn't say, Father, will you heal this person? I know James in the Bible said, call for the elders of the church, let them pray, but that doesn't mean what we thought. It doesn't mean asking God to do something. It means you have this resident divine power in you. You speak to it. You speak to it. You do it. And if a person believes, it's amazing, it's staggering what can happen. Let me tell you something. When I was a teenage kid, I practiced hypnotism. I learned to hypnotize people. I studied, and I had a man who was a hypnotist that taught me to do it. I could do it today. I did it not that long ago. I hypnotized Melanie just to show Amber, my daughter, how it works. You can hypnotize people, and it's funny what you can get people. I mean, I've given people onions and told them it's an apple, and they'll sit there and eat the onion like it's an apple. The thing I did with Melanie, and this was been a couple of years ago when our youngest Amber was at the house, and I hypnotized Melanie. Melanie shops at a store near where we live called Patchington. It's over here on Pinellas Bayway, a couple of miles from here. And I said to Melanie, every time anybody says the word Patchington, that's going to be the most funny word you've ever heard in your life. You're going to, and I said, isn't that a funny word? And I had her under hypnosis. She just started laughing, and I said, well, now I'm going to wake you up. But when I wake you up, you won't remember I told you this. But Patchington will be funny. And Amber just loved it because every time we would say the word Patchington, Melanie would laugh hysterically and then look confused. And yeah, no, you're right. It wasn't just that she laughed. She said, I had her say, I love that store. I made her say, I forgot. You're right. I made her say, I love that store. That's right. I'd forgotten that. So every time we would say, I'd say, but you won't remember me telling you this. And when I woke her up, every time Amber or I would say Patchington, Melanie would say, I love that store. And she kept doing it. And then she reached a place where we'd done it over and over just to watch her. And Amber said something about Patchington, and Melanie says, I love that store. And then she paused and said, though I don't love it that much. It was just a harmless little thing that we did. But the point I make with it is I made her believe at a subconscious level that Patchington is the best store ever been opened on planet Earth, and that she loved it. So she believed that, and every time she heard that word, kabang, that's what her response was. Huh? Now you do spend a lot of money there, yeah. You're getting sleepier. Look into my eyes. That's not how you do it. Anyway, so the point being, when you believe something, when you truly believe it, it's amazing. There's little limit to what can manifest, to what can happen when you believe it. Jesus said, if you speak to the tree and say be planted, it will. Jesus spoke to wind, waves, trees, diseased bodies. He spoke to things. When I was healed on February 6, 2017, a man just spoke to my body and I got well. I got well. Some of you are comfortable with it. Others of you have felt silly doing it because we're used to asking God to do it. But God is saying, here's an idea, you do it. Here's an idea, you do it. Instead of asking me to do it, I'm in you, and it is by my power, right? Nobody's denying that it's him that does it. You do understand that point, right? Nobody understands that it's the waveform, it's the divine energy, the matrix, possibilities collapsing, and nobody's denying that. Nobody's taking. I don't. If you're watching the video or you're sitting, chill out. I'm not taking credit away from God. What I'm trying to say is we need to take on some responsibility for this ourselves. Are you convinced of the power of words now? This is science. All right. Why don't we do this? Why don't we end this evening by a few affirmations together? Let's read that one out loud together. I am an expression of divine energy who possesses the creative ability to change my life. How about this one? I lack nothing but already have everything I need to live the life I was created to know and enjoy. How about this one? The changes I have wanted to see in my life are done. It is finished. My only need is to adjust my awareness to see what is real at this very moment. One more. My perspective is growing deeper in eternal truth every day, and my experience is following the same pathway. My external state of being is changing in sync with the progress of my internal state of being. Now, there's no magic in these particular affirmations that I wrote for you. I would encourage you to create your own affirmations that are personal and specific to your own situation, and then practice it every day. I had a critic, actually a critic that was in our morning group that left and later said, well, this stuff about having to say things over and over again, that doesn't sound like you're just relaxing and resting in Christ to me. To which I say, well, I'm sorry you don't get it. you know, if you don't get it, you don't get it. But the way I see this is that it is an affirmation of my faith. It is me flexing spiritual quantum muscles that will cause me to believe it more when I hear it. Speak out loud. Speak out loud. Intention is good, but words have power too. So create your own affirmations and speak out loud. Write some affirmations that fit your own experience and your own specific situation. And affirm it over and over. I told you, I do this. There are things, you know, for instance, when I've had financial fears, you know, I would walk around and with every step I would say, I live in abundance. There is no shortage. I have everything I need. In fact, here's what I began to say. I'm not kidding. I began at a time when I felt a real sense of deficit and lack. I started saying this because I knew it would force me to recognize the truth. I started saying every day, I'm a generous man. I'm a generous man. I'm a generous man. And I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying what I'm about to tell you as an example. It's just a little example. When I go to a restaurant, well, it's partly because all my children have been servers, and so I'm aware of the need for them to be treated fairly, but it's more than that. When I go to a restaurant, I'm a generous tipper. It's not uncommon for the server to come back and say, thank you. Or, you know, and I know what they meant because I'm a generous tipper. But, you know, let me tell you, I don't just do it for them. I do it for myself because it reminds me you don't have to be cheap. You don't have to be miserly. There's more where that came from. I live in a quantum life where there is no limit. The first vision I ever had in my life was when I was going to leave the pastorate and go out into an itinerant ministry. And I had a vision. Charismatics get so excited when I talk this way. Because I was a Baptist, but even Baptist, God's big enough he could override Baptist stupidity. Did you know that? That's a big God. And I was worried about finances because I was a local pastor getting a paycheck. I had insurance and a housing allowance and all this, and I was going to step out into an itinerant ministry where I would depend on financial donations and honorariums and these kinds of things, and I was scared. And one day I had a vision. It's like, and I say a vision, it was like I went into this deep daydreaming state. I don't think I was asleep, but it was like, the Bible would use the word trance, but that sounds so weird. It was like I was in deep thought in this daydreaming state. And in that vision, I saw, and I've pointed back to it many times in my own mind and with me and Melanie talking about it when we've needed to encourage ourselves. In that vision, I saw what looked like Hoover Dam. Have you ever been to Hoover Dam? It's that round dam, but I didn't think of it as Hoover Dam, but it looked that way. And the dam was bulging like it was about to break, bulging like it was about to break. And I was looking at it like it's going to go. It's about to go. And all of a sudden, I heard clink, clink. And I looked down, and there was a change receptacle like in the Coke machines, you know, when the change falls out of the bottom. It was one of those. And I reached down, and I pulled out of there a coin, and it was a gold coin. I thought, wow. And I heard a voice say to me, let it go. And I thought in my mind, that's a gold coin. Let it go. That's a gold coin. It's just one coin. Let it go. But I had heard the voice, and so in response, I just went like that. And in the vision, the coin just kind of left my hand, and then it just disintegrated, just disappeared, disintegrated. And no sooner had it disappeared till I heard clink, clink. And I looked down, and there was another gold coin, and I pulled it out. And the voice said to me, you see the dam? The thing that you're seeing that's causing it about to break is the amount of gold coins behind it. It's limitless. But the voice said to me, don't ever be afraid to release the gold coin in your hand, because there's where it's coming from. And if you're willing to release it, another one will always fall out. But as long as you hold on to it with a mentality of scarcity and fear, another one won't fall out. And there have been many times I've been tempted to circle the wagons. I've been through some serious stuff in my life. Some of you know the financial challenges that I'm talking about. And there have been some times I've been tempted to circle the wagons and clutch that gold coin with all my might. But then I remember the vision that I had, and I moved and empowered to release it. In potentia, in superposition, we've already been given everything you need, whether it's material things, whether it's health, whether it's freedom from debilitating sins or habits or attitudes, whatever it is. In potentia, in the kingdom of God, in the matrix, in the field where all is well and all shall be well. It's a done deal. It is finished. But what we need is to see it and to believe it, expect it, and say it, and don't stop until it manifests. Tomorrow morning, in the last session, I'm going to talk to you about rewiring your brain, as the science people would say, or renewing your mind, as the Bible would say it. It's the same thing. But I'm going to talk to you about how to do that. I have told you specific things yesterday and today that you can do that will change your world in a quantum sense. But these neurological templates that we function from often, many times, much of the time at an unconscious state, they have to be changed. They have to be replaced. And the old software has to be gradually expelled by lack of use, and the new software has to be installed, and through use it takes preeminence and comes to the front, and it becomes the operating system for the hard drive. And I'm going to talk tomorrow morning about that.